Welcome to self-discoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of An Author's Kiss right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy. My wonderful guest today is Grinelle Desjarlais. I hope I've pronounced it right, but he goes by the name Buzz, and I think that's what we're going to call him today. We're going to be talking about his new book, Saving KC, a book, a fictional, historical book based against the background of post-Vietnam America, which delves into the complexities of addiction, recovery, and redemption. Your new re-released edition of Saving KC offers readers a unique experience by presenting two alternative endings, allowing them to choose between the hopeful conclusion and the more sober, thought-provoking one. Saving KC explores the human condition through the lens of an addict and the quest for personal salvation. Buzz, who came from a long line of Native American creatives, brings a deep personal narrative into the life, reflecting his own experiences through fictional storytelling. Set in post-Vietnam America, it is a story of addiction, recovery, and redemption, which we could all do with, and redemption is there for everybody. So we're going to be talking about this today, but what is it all about? Where does Buzz come about? I'm sure there's an awful lot of his own story intertwined in this story. Welcome to the show, Buzz.
Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate it.
My pleasure. So Vietnam, it feels like such a long time ago, but really, when you think about it in history, it was just around the corner. A senseless war, as far as I'm concerned, as most wars are. But it did leave an awful lot of people when they came home struggling, as many of our veterans do today, come home struggling. I've interviewed many a veteran who have talked about they're so on the ball, they're so in the moment, they so have to be on when they're over there that when they come back and trying to adjust to life and nobody sees them for who they are today, they only remember them who they were when they went to war. And so addiction really does happen a great deal from that. So tell us about why you decided to write this story around, addiction and redemption.
Well, as the cover of the book implies, as you will soon see, those who are watching, Saving KC started as a just kind of an odd set of circumstances. I it was about it's kind of around Karen Carpenter, thus the KC, and I had kind of missed a chunk of my life because I was rather tied up doing things that most people shouldn't be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the service. I came back and I was doing a lot of drugs and alcohol. And just about 2 years ago, I was watching some YouTube musical videos, and I saw Karen Carpenter pop up. And I thought, whatever happened to her?
Yeah.
I missed that part. And so I recovered some ground and realized what had happened to her, the story of anorexia, bulimia, and those kinds of things. And I got deeper into this thing, and I guess a little bit obsessive compulsive. That's part of my challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I started digging into the story about her, and I found it to be probably the most saddest, cruelest thing I could ever have imagined of a young lady having to go through. And so that went a little further and a little further, and then people were always asking the question, what would it be like if Karen Carpenter had lived? And what
Mm-hmm.
could we have saved her from her ultimate fate, death at 32 of anorexia bulimia?
Yeah.
So,
And she's not the only one either, right? I mean, it's a very common thing and quite a common thing amongst celebrities and stars because of this expectation and pressure that is put on them. And I think, this is all adage, you know, we're all diamonds in the rough. Just put pressure on us and we'll be polished. But that's not the same for everybody. Some people may come up as a shiny diamond, but some people are going to break. And because we're not meant to put that kind of pressure on us, are we?
Well, no, and that's part of what we're seeing here with this book. I actually took a suggestion from Stephen King, and this is a novel, and I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist or even a doctor,
Hmm.
and I don't even play one. The idea was to take two disparate things, two greatly different things, and put them together, two different cultures,
Yeah,
Southern California and something from Montana, a kid from the reservation, and this star lady from California, and mash those two stories together and look for the contrasts. And so
yeah.
that's kind of how this came out, and the addiction does play into it on both ends of the scale.
Mm. The commonalities are always there, even though one doesn't, think, the shiny cover says this, but when you go deep, the commonalities are there. And it's like, why do people go into addiction in the first place? And
Mhm.
why did you go into addiction in the first place?
Well, a lot of that is, we suffer from a generational trauma as natives, and it kind of gets
Yes.
passed down through the generations,
Hmm.
and there's no processing of that, whatever that is, and it just gets passed down and passed down. We don't know we're doing it. It's the
Yeah.
natural thing to do. It just flows that way. And the old saying is pass it on or pass it back. So we get
Hmm.
to a place where we have to stop and realize that we have to pass this thing back or stop it, and set a new course for a healthy existence with ourselves and our families moving to the future. I was a dead duck with this thing because I was genetically and environmentally predisposed to do what I did.
Right.
Everybody around me drank, did, mostly back then on the reservation, everybody drank, everybody
Yes.
fought, everybody did all these wild things. And I swear to God, I would never, ever do that. I was the oldest of six, and I was always in the role of protector
Mm.
and watching out for everybody. And it was horrible when they all left. The parents left. It was abandonment at its finest. And then at the same time, we all just dreaded the time when they would come back because,
Mm.
oh, So this push-pull set
Mm.
this thing up with a guy like me. At the age of 14, 15, I took my first drink, and it was like my first thought was, why didn't I do this before? The grass got greener, the music started playing, and I had found a solution to all my troubles in life.
Mm.
And away I went.
Mm. Yeah, it always looks rosy in the beginning, doesn't it?
No,
Um,
it feels that way. More about feeling than looks,
yeah.
because
Hmm.
we're about
Hmm.
feelings.
And this speaks to the DNA programming. Unfortunately, your culture has been basically they just tried to obliterate you all. And so what they did is they gave you the drink, they gave you everything else, and it just became that hopelessness and escapism. And unfortunately, when you have that in the DNA, it's a tendency to go to that. Never mind that it's already culturally there and acceptable, but it's actually in the DNA until one recognizes the program and the pattern and has the strength and the courage to say, not me. I'm not going to go that road, or in that road, go, enough is enough. I am not going to keep on repeating this pattern. The pattern is kept repeating because it's very much hereditary. And people don't actually understand that, how much of it is not just the environment, but the DNA programming itself.
Mhm. And Europeans have been drinking alcohol since day one
Yeah.
and processing it, and it's in their culture, and it's in their DNA, if you will. It's their bodies can process it, and they don't have to do odd things when they drink it.
Moderation.
And then
A drink with dinner and things like that. It wasn't kind of escapism, so to speak, as it has become so much in Western society.
yeah. And so when it comes to natives, our bodies are relatively new at processing alcohol,
Mm,
and that's witnessed by diabetes, by liver disease, kidney disease that's prevalent among natives. our bodies just weren't made to handle that stuff.
Right, exactly. It's interesting because my ex-husband is Chinese, and
Mm.
every time he drank, he went as red as my sweater. He wasn't designed for drink at all. He liked it. It didn't like him. And, there's just some cultures that are just not good with it,
Yeah,
and certain types of alcohol. And we really need to know our body, but we're certainly not taught that when we're young, are we?
yeah, it's very true. And unfortunately, it's very easy for us to set up a cycle of addiction because of our environmental situations. And then, oh, it feels good. It just feels good. And we're people with holes, it's been
Yeah.
said. And
Hmm.
then when we attempt to fill all those hurting holes with alcohol, we
Yes.
overfill them.
I mean, you look at someone like Karen Carpenter, and funny enough, one of her songs was on Facebook just yesterday, and I was listening to it. It was just so pure, absolutely pure. And, she had the love of her brother, and then people absolutely loved her, but she was tormented. And that never came out in her songs. But it was almost the heart and soul of what she wanted to be and what her life wanted to be came out in the songs. But obviously, there was turmoil on inside of her with the anorexia and everything else. And it's like, if the old adage, do not judge a book by its cover, we don't know what's going on in someone's life, right? And we need to just be more aware and care.
So in that time when Karen Carpenter passed on in 1983, anorexia was not a thing.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, what happened to her?
Yeah.
What's this? What's this thing? And at that time, if we all recall, Twiggy was a big
Yes,
thing.
yes. I was brought
The,
up with Twiggy.
the
Yeah, yeah.
underweight Brit who, and she's still alive today, interestingly enough.
Mm.
But
But she was naturally skinny.
yes,
But the
yes,
industry, made that you had to be skinny in order to be loved or to be,
yeah,
admired. And it's just no, balderdash, balderdash. No, you don't.
yeah.
We were born with
Yeah.
curves.
Well, the interesting thing about and what I had to do is search for a way to tie these two things together. Someone who is affected by drugs and alcohol to the extent it was going to be fatal, and was actually fatal for that person because it had went through this person went through an episode in the book. On the other end of the scale, so you've got a person here who needs to, the male character needs to stop doing something. And then with Karen Carpenter, or the Karen Carpenter character that I show, I don't use her name and I don't do those kinds of things. I have to keep a distance from that. Her deal was she needed to start doing something. And so you had the opposite end of that scale. These things are working. So I had to search for a way, a common thing that was common to both of them, as we were talking about earlier. So with anorexia, back then, unknown, completely unknown, I did some research, obviously, and I found that there was one person that had figured out or had developed a model for the treatment of anorexia bulimia. One person that was aware of it and had developed treatment. Hildy Brush. She was a German immigrant. She immigrated to the United States, wrote a couple of books. I think one was like the Golden Cage, because that's what they refer to anorexia bulimia as a person that's in this golden cage. You'd figure, what's your problem? I mean, this
Mm.
is you got everything you need, all this wealth and money and stuff, and then all of a sudden there's this thing. So had to look at for a way that these two people had these different things going on, and then with that they meet, and then it kind of goes from there. But
I
and
mean, Princess Di,
yeah,
had bulimia and didn't quite, I mean, she did can become anorexic, but not to the same extent that Karen Carpenter did. I mean, she just whittled away. Um, but for an awful lot of people, it's an addiction, just like I think alcohol or drugs. It is a call for help.
mhm,
It's a feeling of a lack of identity or a lack of worth. And it's a screaming from when the voice isn't heard, the action is heard.
And obviously the what's common to both that is interesting is you cannot cure either one.
Mm,
Alcoholism cannot be cured. Anorexia bulimia at a level cannot be cured. We can put them in remission and stay vigilant. That's the best we can do. They never go away. As the old saying goes, once you're a pickle, you cannot become a cucumber again.
mm,
So
mm,
that it's just an interesting dynamic. And I never knew these things about anorexia bulimia until I dug into this thing and started discovering it's interesting how these two things tie together. But it's the thing that brings these two characters together in a strange way, although neither one realizes it right away.
mm. So
So
how did you do the setting of these characters meeting?
actually, it's interesting when I wrote this book, because this is my first book. And I didn't know what to do with it. It goes much deeper than that. With this realization that Karen Carpenter had gone through this ordeal and many pressures, the pressure of the music industry, the pressure of her family and her brother and all the people around her were kind of had this one common focal point, and that was her.
Yeah,
And somebody just had to say something about her weight sometime in a periodical that was published, a professional periodical. She took that to heart. And then really the only thing she could control, like with most anorexic, is the thing that they eat
yeah,
and the control of what her body looks like. And this mostly affects young women exclusively.
yes.
And then there's this odd relationship between daughters and mothers. And Karen's mother, as in the character in the book, was pretty old fashioned, held some old Puritan type values, and there's this and there's that and there's this, and the son
Hmm.
was actually the favored, and she just happened to be along for the ride, and then one day this voice popped out, and it was like, holy, now what are we gonna do?
Yeah, capitalize on it, right? To which they did. So the other character, let's talk about this other character and who this person is.
Okay, so his name is Kelly Chase. And interestingly enough, both characters have the same initials,
Hmm.
KAC. And if you look at the book, there's a license plate kind of falling out of the sky, a California plate to be caught by some hands. And that's the last license plate that was on Karen Carpenter's car.
Ah, okay.
That's where that comes from. So there's a lot of tie-ins, both the
Mm,
initials are the same and all this kind of stuff. Kelly was raised on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation in Montana, and much where my home stomping grounds is at up there. Couched between two reservations, the Rocky Boy Indian Reservation and the Blackfeet Reservation, and in that area. So that's where he comes from, on a ranch. And his father was a product of the school system, of the
oh,
government school system.
which is
And
horrific.
his family, these parts of his family were split up and spread and died as a result of those systems.
Oh,
His father was damaged too,
hmm.
and he had a brother, and his mother was a non-Indian, and his parents happened to meet up through a set of weird circumstances. Anyway, they married, and the two brothers were living in Montana, of course, with their family, and he always had this desire, this kid did, to get to California. He loved California for some reason. So the book goes on, and we eventually get him placed in a school, Long Beach College down there, and he was able to get into that school. He is set to get married to this gal, a native gal from the Morongo down in Southern California, and that's kind of, they go to school and they're getting ready to get married, and certain things happen, and he winds up in Vietnam all of a sudden, unintentionally.
Which so many did, right? Whether you
Yep.
wanted to or not. I mean, how many, dodgers do we have in Canada that say, no, I'm not going to fight this war, and I'm quite
Yeah.
principled to do so. But yes, that can put a spanner in the works, can't it? Suddenly sent away to a war.
Yeah, so the interesting part is I started this book right, I'm like in the middle of it because I wanted to, okay, what is the nexus? for these two lives crossing, and what does it look like?
Mm,
And then once I established that, when they first met, it was an emotional meetup, very much so for both of them. And they'd never met one another before. And then they meet one another, they have an experience there in this church, and then they both go their separate ways, but they never forgot the meeting.
mm,
And this was after he got back from Vietnam, got out of the hospital on a leave, and she just happened to be volunteering at that church. And then they meet, have this experience. And for him, it was very emotional because 3 years in captivity, and he was not used to human touch, especially from a female. And this woman lays her hands on his shoulder, and he has an experience. I mean, he melts down. And so I wanted to take that, and then I took that idea, and I built from it from the beginning toward that center, and then from that center out the other direction.
mm, interesting approach to it. We never know, actually. There's always somebody somewhere along that path in life that becomes our redirect, becomes our pivot. You know, that somebody that speaks to us in a way that is a revelation. Although you feel seen and heard. And it's uh, so many people I've interviewed through the years have said, I was struggling with this and I was struggling with that. And I sat down on this park bench and I met this one man and he just said this to me. And then suddenly the light bulbs went off. Everything made sense. And it's
Mhm.
like, it's that kind of meeting, isn't it? Whether, you know, the two souls are speaking to each other, saying what needs to be said that makes sense, that very often the brain cannot get there.
Yeah. So this experience for me was very spiritual. And those of us who are in recovery, obviously we have a spiritual side that we have to
Yes,
develop.
yes, most
And
certainly. That is your compass, your core, your heart, your soul, your everything. Yeah.
and and it's kind of interesting in the recovery community, we notice that doctors and psychiatrists and lawyers and sheriffs and judges and parents and mothers and all that stuff cannot save us.
Hmm.
In the end, we have to develop this thing, and whatever we call it, it has
Yeah.
more power than we do, and but it can't stay the same, I've discovered. It changes through the course of our recovering lives.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's not the guy in the white suit and the beard all the time because we were instructed it is a spiritual program. It's not a religious program, it is a spiritual program. And spirituality can include quantum reality, can
Yes.
include astrology,
Absolutely.
can go that far afield, and reincarnation is in there too.
Hmm.
And I was introduced to reincarnation some years back, and I thought it was get out of here with that stuff. Because we're based still, we have our Jesuit roots
Hmm.
where we came from, and as abusive as that was, it's still there.
Yes.
And so that's really hard to overcome because if
Mm.
you run out in traffic and you start believing in that silly stuff, then you're committing a sin and you're going to go to hell. And so it's like,
But that's a form of control. And all of that is a form of control. And true God, universe, spirit, source, energy, what anybody wants to call it, is a personal feeling that touches us, that, as I said, becomes our compass. It becomes our wisdom. It resonates with our heart and truth. It lifts our spirit into action for us to find clarity of mind when we need to know it. And it's that knowingness. And, that knowingness is so pure and so true and so here for you, and for you to be what you're meant to be there for everyone else, because that's what we're here to do is contribute. Where many religions are all about control by making you afraid and keeping you paralyzed, keeping you crippled, where spirituality is about expansion. It's
yeah.
about embrace. It's about delving in. And that, of course, reincarnation, it's not our bodies that are reincarnated, it's our soul and our spirit that comes back and has another life because it's the soul that's having the experience anyway.
So I've discovered that the knowing, as you talk about, transcends any belief system.
Hmm.
It just does because, like myself, I've gotten to a place where some things I just know that they're right,
Yes.
and I don't have to believe in them anymore.
You feel it.
Yeah, it's just there. much like the writing of this book now, debut novel. I've never written a book before. I'm an electrical
Mhm.
contractor in Seattle, Washington. I do like heavy man stuff, you know. And, and here comes this thing,
Yeah.
and it gets stuck in my head. And I always tell people, do you remember Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where the guy goes a little nuts and he's throwing mud inside of his house and he's building this thing on the coffee table and his kids are going, "What's wrong
Mashed
with
potato. Yeah.
Dad?"
Yes.
This is kind of like that. Is
Yeah.
my wife's going, are you okay?
And for a lot of people it is. For me it's not. It's my world actually. That's where I live. So for me it's not. I love it when people have opened the door to that and realize that there's so much more than being a humanoid.
Yeah,
That we are a spirit having a human experience, and that when we open up to that, the experience of being a human is so much more enlightened, and just so much deeper and more wondrous than what we have lived or what we have thought life was about.
yeah. So this interesting thing is that it grabbed a hold of me, and I started writing this thing, and I didn't know where it was going. Had no idea. I knew nothing of the publishing industry, none of those kinds of things. All I knew was that I would walk out of my office about 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd go into the kitchen. I would just break down in
Mhm.
tears and just couldn't figure out what the hell was going on with me because this is
Release.
unusual for me. But then I go back and I start writing and writing and writing. And this manuscript took place probably in the space of 3 months.
Hmm.
And in that process, I contacted a publisher that was, the aim was to self-publish, which I again knew nothing of. So that's how this took shape. And I was just like driven to do this thing. And it came out the other end. And we have Saving Casey as a result of this
Hmm.
emotional
You
thing.
were guided.
I had to go, yeah, someone said, Buzz, you were channeled, right?
Yeah.
By a Karen Carpenter, probably, that started scaring me. I had to schedule an appointment with my psychiatrist. And I went, I sat down and I asked her, is it possible to fall in love with somebody who's dead? And she said, no one's getting hurt, are they? And I said, well, I don't think so. Maybe me a little bit.
And yes, it is possible because the essence of a person doesn't die with them. She left that behind, especially in her music. And yes, we can love people that have passed on because they're still there. They're just not there in body form. And I love it when people have an awakening, and when you think about it, when you look at your hereditary culture, you were you were people that listened to the land. You were people that followed the stars. You were very intuitive people until
Yeah.
other people came along and beat that out of you. And you're going back to your core roots of that intuition of listening and and allowing it to show you the path forward, even if it's in a bizarre way of this book.
It's that knowing that we speak of.
Hmm.
I'll tell you a quick story about a band of Indians in Canada called the Alkali Lake Band. In the early 70s into the 80s, they were 100% became 100, there's about 200 members, and they were 100% alcoholic. Until finally one day, the leader went to an adjoining town and started going to meetings of a secret anonymous organization. And that slowly spread to his wife and then to other members slowly but surely over the course of 2 years. The entire clan and tribe had 100% sobriety. And we started up a youth organization in Spokane, Washington called Native Project in the early 80s. I called Andy Chelsea, the leader of that group, asking if he'd come up and speak to our kids. He agreed, so he flew up, and I went to the airport and got him. And we're headed for lunch, and he whipped a book out of his back pocket and started waving it in the air. He says, "Buzz, I found the answer. I found the answer." And it was this book on reincarnation. And I was sitting there rolling my eyes as I was driving down the road, inwardly rolling my eyes, thinking, oh, I picked up a nut. And all these years later, here it comes again.
Yes,
It comes full circle. And I'm
yes.
thinking, that doggone Andy was right.
Well, Catholicism always believed in reincarnation.
Mhm.
And then around the 15th century, they decided to demolish that because if people believed in reincarnation, that they'll be born again, they wouldn't be aren't so easily controlled.
Oh, yes,
So,
of
so
course.
they banned the idea of reincarnation and made it even a sin to talk about
Yeah.
because again, it was a form of control. Most religions are not godly.
Mhm.
Their power.
Mhm.
And when you do find a religion that is about the essence of who you are and the connection to, then you have found a religion that is really true because it's not about any one
Yeah.
control thing. It is about us opening up and
Yeah.
sharing the essence of who we are and melding those essences into the greater good for all kind, not just mankind, all kind, planet, all living species. Native Americans certainly understood the respect of the land, the respect of the species, the respect of the knowledge and the intuition that they had. And I'm hoping that your people through healing will come back to that. And this is part of what you're
Yeah.
revealing now.
And really what's at the bottom of all that power that's to be achieved is coins and gold, you know? That's what it
Hmm.
translates into. And it's just like my ancestors 2 or 3 generations past, it was like moving tribes around to get them away from the resource
Yes.
that they want to get so they could get more money and then every time you move the natives to one piece of another place, um, the, there was like you moved them on top of an oil patch or you moved them on top of gold or you did this or you did that. So it was it's like they just couldn't win.
No,
But
no. And, again, it's, kind of we're in a lot of ways, we're seeing that same repression happening in the world at the present moment. Um, we're seeing this so much in North America, especially right now, where again, division and separation and categorization and suppression, all of that is taking place at the present moment. And it's like so sad that human beings do not learn from the past and that, we're now going to have another trauma DNA, in there with people. And it's like somewhere along the line we've got to turn the dial and we've got to stop doing the same old things. And, um, free speech is free speech and weapons don't belong there. Uh, and
so
suppression of free
so
speech, it's the free speech has to have an accountability. Is it true? Does it hurt anyone? Does it help people? Not just free speech or spewing stuff for the sake of spewing it, or to rile people up into hysteria. There has to be accountability for that speech.
well, I think there's these some sort of accountability, but there also is some responsibility in that the person taking that any sort of speech in needs to be responsible for knowing what is and what isn't.
Yes.
And when the speech is aimed at a pedestrian, that pedestrian should have an idea what's going on.
Hmm.
And if they don't, that's kind of falls on something, it kind of falls on them. If they bite and chew and bite that off and consume whatever that is, if it's wrong, they're going to pay the price for it until they
Yep.
learn different. And that's
Yep.
all I can say. I mean, and about recovery for me, I always tell people, and I know it's probably a sad thing to have to say, uh, I say that in Yellowstone Park or in Glacier Park, we learned do not feed the bears because they will eat you. So there's a little bit of wisdom in that.
Hmm.
You can try to help somebody or something, but you do so at your own
Yes.
responsibility. Know what you're getting yourself into because you need to be prepared to pay the price if it goes the wrong direction.
Right.
And that's kind of the deal. So
Mm.
one has to be prepared to educate themselves on whatever's going on out there and don't just consume anything that's that's
Exactly. I mean, this
available.
is, just did a previous show with that, which is like we've never had in the history of time more opportunity to educate ourselves.
Mhm.
And yet we have so many people who choose to be uneducated in the way of following up. Is that
Mhm.
true? Is that a fact?
Mhm.
Do I really want to be a part of that? Where is
Mhm.
my integrity? Where is my dignity? Where's my responsibility? And I think if everybody took that on, I always say the finger pointing. While you're pointing it's them, it's them, it's them, there's three pointing back at you.
Yeah.
Well, where's your accountability, responsibility, and your action,
Yeah.
right? Because ultimately it is up to us. And obviously with Native Americans, what happened to you was an atrocity. It happened here in Canada as well. And it's an atrocity. And the very slow healing is happening now, and the recovery is now being made more public and more prominent. But at the same time, um, when one has been abused for so long, yes, it's going to be in your DNA, but being aware of that, it's also, I don't want to be the victim anymore. I want to have the power to stand tall and be my own person in my own strength. And we have to make that decision at some point, don't we?
Yeah. I still sponsor people in the Secret Anonymous program. Um, and that's part of the lesson here is that I can't fix you.
Mm,
As I said before, doctors can't fix you. None of these people can
yeah.
fix you unless you can help fix yourself.
Yes.
Make
People can
that,
help you on your
make,
journey, but it's your
make that,
responsibility. Yeah.
make that decision. But
Yes.
no one can cure you, no one can fix you. And it's also been said particularly with alcoholism, is that somewhere we cross a line.
Mm,
The buzzers and bells and lights didn't go off, but we crossed the line into a place where we put ourselves beyond human aid.
mm,
And what does that mean?
hmm.
It means that whatever is there to help fix you does not exist on the face of this earth. It is a spiritual guide, it is a spiritual existence that one has to develop in order to gain that strength to be able to assist in your personal recovery.
Yes.
And again, it's about personal responsibility and victim. We move really essentially what I tell folks that I help. It's a long journey to go from a taker to a giver.
Hmm.
I mean, it's a long ways away, but that is essentially the journey to stop taking and learn to give with joy.
Yes.
And to learn to give without thought of repayment or expectation of anything in return, and to be able to get there. Now, am I doing that perfectly? I'm a human being. I whiffle waffle
Yes.
all the time, but I do the best I can. I'd like to think that the trend line is going upward.
You're being conscious about your actions. And that's the
Mhm.
difference, right? Is that when we do things unconsciously, that's when we become destructive. Right. But when we are conscious about it, whether we're perfect about it or not, at least we're being conscious that I could do better there, or I have fallen off here, or maybe I just need to give myself a break and a hug here right now. And not beat myself up because I did something that maybe I'm not so proud of. And I think that's that consciousness that as your companion, we're along with common sense.
And a part of our programs too are about there are many facets. We learn so much about ourselves as we go through these things. One of the big pieces that I'm always harping on people, do your meditation, do some meditation today.
Mm,
And the reason for that I've discovered is it brings us back to zero. And it brings
mm,
back to hopefully to a place of nothing
hmm.
where we're just hanging there and got the antennas all up, looking for the message. If it comes, it comes. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but it's always there. But to tone ourselves down and position ourselves as a good receiver to pick up the
Mm.
messages that are there and to just calm this thing down and make it
Yes.
sit for a while. 20 minutes a day, at least.
Yeah.
And most people, oh, that doesn't work. Well, it's not going to work if you don't try it.
And it, being cross-legged on the floor isn't for everybody. Maybe it's a walk in nature. It's where do you find your peace so you can center? That what you're talking about is centering yourself. And when you center yourself, you're in a space of just space. just
Yeah.
space. And in that space, you're now more open and ready to receive the wisdom that you require. But
Mhm.
to be in that space, switch off the noggin.
And yes, and are these things for us, coming off the street, still blowing bad breath and full of wrong ideas and a total lost victim, you know, it's just a spoonful at a time, a spoonful
Mm,
at a time.
yeah.
We call that growing up in public because a guy like me, I skipped all the social skills that young teens and mid-teens had for me, the hormones and the
Hmm.
interacting with other people and the socializing and getting to know myself and other people. I kind of went all through that. I didn't experience that. And so here I am sobering up at the age of 32 and 33 and having to deal with that for the first time and having to meet these experiences head on and getting through them. And it's very, very painful and very arduous and just very difficult to do. And I sympathize with anybody, and I know what that's like. I know how that
Yeah.
feels. That growing up in public, it's sort of, oof, but
Mm,
it's a necessary thing because we don't get
yes.
this all at once.
No, 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 no. You know, again, through the years of interviewing, it's seeing your courage to take this journey, knowing it's going to be hard, finding your strength along the way that you didn't know you had, discovering abilities and skills that you had that you had never seen there before, and then
Mhm.
coming into realizations of the true essence of who you really are. It's a hard journey, but it's climbing Mount Everest. Why do people do it? Right? It's once they get to the top, that exaltation, and in this case, of discovering who you really are meant to be, not who you were conditioned to be, but who you were meant to be, and stepping into that is truly the journey of what life is all about.
That comes to in recovery. I'll speak to mostly
Mm,
people in recovery. We go through all this, through these experiences of just learning how to be an adolescent at 33,
yeah.
and those lessons. But somebody sticks around long enough and they develop a program and say they've got 15 to 20 years sober. And they're just kind of like, I don't know what to do here. So I just feel lost. There's nothing going on. And I
We hope
tell
that
these
you
people,
enjoyed the show. There are
realize
so many more for you
when we
here
came
on
to this earth,
selfdiscoverywisdom.com.
a
Just go to the
newly
podcast tab
born
at the
into
top there, and
whatever,
you will see
a
all the
new
many
being,
genres and all
we
3,000 shows
came here with some
ready for your
factory
listening.
installations,
We are here to serve you, to help
that
you
were
on your journey of
specifically
life,
made for
and we
us.
know that through inspiration, it begets
And
invitation.
those
We are
things,
supported by
as
you,
we
the
got
listeners,
turned,
those that we interview.
we those
Anything that you
valuable
can
things
spare
got
us,
misused and
donation would be
misplaced and
greatly
corrupted,
accepted, and we do hope that
and
you enjoy
they
the
were
next show.
unrecognizable. Now you get sober and you spend some time in recovery, and then
Mm,
there's something missing. There's something missing, and there's this search that goes on for what the heck's going on here. And I say, some people are meant to be, were meant, they came here to be fantastic actors and orators and speech makers and writers and inventors and musicians and all these wonderful things. And that got kind of messed up.
yeah.
Now here we are kind of collecting ourselves, and those things they're coming back.
Mm.
And they come back like with a vengeance, like, hey, this guy wrote this book. He's an idiot electrician in Seattle and he wrote a book. What happened?
It just shows there's a book in everybody, and the thing is that it used to be my brother's a professional author and taught literature at the master's level. But I've written a book and I've written in three other books as an anthology. Um, Am I perfect, literally? No, you have editors for that. But the thing is, if there's a story in you that needs to be told, why should it only be the elite that do it? If there's a story in you that needs to be told, it needs to be out because that story is what somebody else is needing to hear because they're there at that moment, that relatability or that discovery of how you did it. That's the reason why I do these podcasts. sharing what the problem is, how somebody found a solution, it becomes the answer that somebody's looking for. That
Mm.
pivot, that change, that something that they can grasp onto to help them into that next stage in life. And that's what it's about. So, anybody judging someone on writing a book, I will admit there are some people that have just written gibberish out there for the sake of writing a book, but you've put a lot of thought into this, a lot of your own experience into this, but you wanted to make it something that wasn't just a step-by-step story of you, but
Mm.
it's somebody that influenced you so greatly, like Karen Carpenter,
Mm.
and her journey, where you went down the research, taking your own journey of addiction. That meeting in the church was your soul's meeting with her, that has been that illumination that has then taken another journey in itself. So, yes, it had to be written. And I don't care what anybody else says.
So it's, yeah, all of this stuff is very interesting because it's like overnight I was catapulted into all of these different things. I started reading about quantum physics and quantum reality and how
Yeah.
that fit together. And now I understand today, about beliefs and knowing and those kinds of things, classical physics, the Einstein sort of physics that, through formula is all written down and it can be figured out and formalized and all this stuff. But quantum cannot be. But it's somewhere in 1900, in the year 1900, somebody figured out this is a thing.
Yes.
Of course,
Nikola Tesla,
the
right? Yeah.
classical physicists, oh, that's BS.
Yeah.
No, don't listen to those guys. And if you get right down to the bottom of it, classical physics is about money.
Yes.
Because if things changed in a dramatic fashion and people really started to, know that quantum theory and quantum physics is a real thing, and it is there, what would happen to the money in classical physics would kind of dry up, and so
All
would the
right.
power.
Well,
So,
that's the change that is happening. We are going to quantum currency. And that quantum currency is actually each and every one of our energies. That's where the energies, the higher we rise up in frequency, in hertz, in energy, in vibrations, the higher we rise up in that, the higher we're rising up into the quantum energy that becomes human race's currency.
yeah. And it's interesting too because, you know, guys are, how come I got to go to these damn meetings? I said, okay, here's the thing. It's been discovered that, people in recovery run at about 517 hertz.
Hmm.
Went to a meeting, I almost said a secret anonymous meeting. Uh, it's above that. It's sometimes way above that because there's a group of people there and everyone's focused on one thing and the energy rises so quickly, so highly, and it has such a high vibratory presence. Just being in that room, it goes right through your body. And
Yeah.
when you leave, you always feel good. Where does that come from?
We are all contributors. I draw the analogy of this where each one of us discovering what our instrument is. And we can play as a soloist, we can play well. However, when we join an orchestra, each one of us in our own strength, our own abilities, and come together harmoniously in that orchestra, we transcend that energy, absolutely transcend it. And that's the point of it. The love vibration starts at 580 hertz.
Mhm.
When you are resonating on that love vibration, and the higher you go into that love, it regenerates itself. Love regenerates and regenerates and regenerates. The more you give out, the more you get. We can't knowingly do any harm to anyone else in that vibration. To do so would to harm ourselves because we're so connected, right? So this understanding of energy and how it's rising, how we need to raise it up in our own selves is the currency because love, kindness, caring, compassion, consideration, common sense is the currency that actually fortifies the human race of all life forms here on this planet. It isn't money. Money is just a tool that you need to put the roof over your head and food in your stomach, but it is not the be all. Love really is. Love is all. And when we step into that love frequency, an amazing amount of healing happens and so much love shared out becomes not only the healing of the people and the planet, because Mama is pissed at us. Mama Earth is pissed at us the way we're treating her. Um, we become the solution that is needed. So you being on your recovery, writing a book like this, acknowledging the, the quantumness of your journey is excellent. And please keep speaking out about that. I don't care if other people roll their eyebrows. Just keep speaking out on that because the people that are on the fence, that are not quite sure what they're feeling, you're going to articulate for them something that they're not comprehending, but need to know that they're not crazy.
Well, and that's I have to be careful with this too. It's some kind of a loaded gun too. And people who are new in recovery, I don't go there a lot. I
Mhm.
keep it to the basics, just as
Until they're at that
spoon
level.
feed,
Yeah.
until
Mhm.
because it's like spooking the herd
Yeah,
if
yeah. Too
you
much too soon. So you have to go where they're at, meet them where they're at. And as you said, nobody can fix anybody. What you can do is give them the encouragement and the tools and the skills to fix themselves. It's up to them. And we've also got to stop really looking at ourselves as a broken race. We're damaged. We're damaged by this expectation that's been put upon us,
Mhm.
generation after generation of what we're meant to be. And we're only popular if we're rich or famous, um, by letting go of all of that and getting back to the nature of who we are as a human race and
Yeah,
understanding where the enrichment and the abundant really lies, the more we immerse into that, the more we feed our heart, soul, and spirit, which then heals our mind and our trauma.
yeah. It's an interesting process, and with me, and it's hard to not get hooked into that because I've witnessed tremendous successes and just other heartbreaking failures that usually end in death.
Mm,
And because it is that sort of a thing, it's yes, true, nobody gets out alive.
mm.
But I tell people, how do you really, how do you want to end this thing?
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
do you want to go out nasty and ugly
Or do you want
and,
to write your own chapter?
and hurt everybody and destroy a lot of things on
Yeah,
your way out?
yeah.
What do you want to visualize yourself when you pass from the scene and it's your funeral and there's 1,000 people there and they all just love the hell out of you? You know, the
Yeah,
wonderful things that you did and the person that you became and the things that you overcame and you did that were so wonderful.
yeah,
Which do you want? I mean, there
yeah,
you are.
yeah,
And if you run out the side door, the eject button gets hit and you bounce up and you bounce right back in a different form and a different body, but the same lesson applies. What are you going to do
mhm,
then?
mhm. Persistence, persistence, persistence. The thing is, even in full recovery, you're going to get triggers, right? And you're going to get vulnerable moments. And the thing is to understand it's a moment. You haven't gone backwards. You're not back there where you were. You're just in a vulnerable moment. What is the universe trying to tell you? Is it a reflection on look how far you've come and who you are today? Or is it that perhaps, are you unknowingly taking a path that could lead you back there if you don't pay attention? All of these things are messages to us, and it's for us to contemplate what that message is.
Yes, and there's a synchronicity to everything. There's a swirl to the universe. We know this. And those of us who are not participating in that
Mm.
event, we're going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And we're facing all of the bumps and the grinds that all of that entails. And we have to be in the moment to consider ourselves, to be able to stop going the wrong way and consciously start moving the right way and notice how that feels.
Mm.
And at any given time, we can stop and try to go the other way, but notice how that feels.
Yes.
And so follow the swirl because it'll
Mm.
take you there.
Hmm.
You just have to be able to let it. I
And
think.
yeah, you got to be willing to be uncomfortable to get comfortable, right? And really, and I think for an awful lot of people that have been addicts of anything, or people that are living in, to hate is an addiction.
Mhm.
to blame other people for everything is an addiction. Anytime you're not taking responsibility is an addiction, because you're passing the buck and not owning it. And when you step away from it, even just a little bit, and you look back and you realize how painful it was to be in that state, how
Mhm.
restrictive it was,
Yeah.
compressing on you. And the more you more walk away from it and start feeling, loosening up, then you become, I think, really aware of how much discomfort you were really in. But you have to,
And,
get there.
and it's important for us to create the relationships through our life, whether recovering or not, uh, to have someone to really to be able to share this stuff with at a gut level, at the level that this other person or these other people would understand, or this group would understand. And in recovery things, we have that.
Hmm.
If someone's going through a traumatic experience, the loss of a son or a daughter or a mother or father, there's always a place to go when you just need to crash and break
Right.
down,
Yeah.
and someone there to catch you.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not in your family, it's that
Mm.
group that is there to, when you have that meltdown, there to catch you and to
And
receive
I think
you.
I think very often that group is so much better than the meltdown because with family, you feel guilty for imposing. And the family love you so much they don't know what to do, and it's traumatizing. I think, going to another group where I've just got you. I've just got you. No judgment. I've
Yeah.
just got you,
Mhm.
helps that person release by having that kind of crash and meltdown, come out of it feeling better and not feeling that they had to drag their family through it, who really so much want to help but have no idea how to do it.
And we do have, I believe, spirit guides.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I used to think that was such foolishness. And anybody who has ever watched NCIS and the Jethro Gibbs tap on the
Yes.
side of the head, that's what that is, you know?
Yeah.
And I've gone through a couple experiences recently where something happened to me like once, and I thought that's weird. And then I got the bell rung twice, and I thought, oh, hey, you better listen. Something's trying. And I'll go ahead and do something that I think is kind of out of character and strange, but it's the thing I was supposed to do. And then it
Exactly.
shows itself later on. And it's so interesting how that works. But
I know.
my antennas have to be up to catch those messages too, because if we just got our head down and not looking,
I call them the cosmic nudge, nudge, wink, wink, or cosmic two by four. And the
yeah,
cosmic comes along with a nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Are you paying attention? Look at this direction. Look at this. Look at that. And we're not. It's just head down, and then whackaroo, the cosmic two by four comes along. Have I got your attention now?
you really get hit, don't you? And that's so interesting. Those of us who have been through this recovery ordeal, there's people who go to treatment, they go to treatment, they go to treatment over and over. And I finally tell them, you got to stop doing that because all that treatment is just a two by four to your face. I'm just trying to
Yes.
get your attention. They can't fix you.
No.
They're just
When
trying
are
to
you
get
going to
your
make
attention.
different choices? That's the thing, making different choices. No amount of drugs, meditation, this, that, medication, all of that. Yeah, it's all temporary band-aid. But when you're going to get to the core of the problem,
Yeah,
address the core of the problem and release that core and
there,
take onus for your, for what's happened. We're going to continue to be the victim,
mm,
that way. But this way, you take ownership. I'm no longer the victim. I'm my own hero.
yeah. And that's the way to look at oneself is that you've got this heroic complex within yourself that's just waiting to be experienced by other
Yeah.
people. And you're waiting to give it away, and you can give it away, but first you have to have something to give away,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And
You
then
know, it,
it's our experiences that we do start with.
I mean, look at your own life, as a Native American, you've had the suppression, you've had the um just the expectation to be an alcoholic or drug addict, like to not amount to anything because that is what Native Americans have received for a couple of hundred years.
Mm,
They've taken a mighty, mighty nation and just chiseled you down to nothing. Well, it's time now for you to rise back up. And that means one by one. You can be that inspiration that begets that invitation for another. I've been there. Look at where I am now. That invitation is sent. I'm here to help you on your journey, but it's your journey. And we as as human beings, have to decide that we want to walk that path, that we're tired of the pain, we're tired of the way we feel, and we want to change it. But, you're a great example of I don't have to be that statistic. I don't have to be that DNA. Been there, done that. I made a choice. And that choice was to take a different path and now be that illumination for others. And you've put it in a book in a not so in your face way, but two journeys of how they've merged into one and their commonality and what
Yeah.
they meant to each other. And it's been proven that people will learn more from a story than they will from a direct, in your face sermon. So,
Mm.
this kind of book is a wonderful book to have for people who are going through any of this or people who don't understand it, to
Mm.
read it and get a comprehension of it, of what other people are going through. If we don't have compassion, how are we going to know how to help? First and foremost, have compassion,
Yeah.
right? Nobody wants to be blamed or shamed. We want compassion, but then it's got to get to a point where that compassion says now action.
Yeah, that's very true. And a lot of us make decisions, but without an action behind the decision, then we do go nowhere.
Exactly. You've got
So
to get out of first gear, right?
that's the other challenge. It's like the old three frogs on the log story.
Yeah,
Frog makes the decision to jump off the log. How many are there? Oh, no, there's two. No, there's still three. All he did is make a decision. He didn't jump.
yeah, yeah. The when you go in to that space we were talking about, that kind of nothingness, that's when you know the wisdom you need to make the right choice, right? We can't do it from this database, this head. It's filled with God knows what. Old programming data, expectation. We don't even know how to access the knowledge we need because it's too much of everything else. We've got to trust the wisdom at that core. And
Yeah.
then we will know what action to take.
And seeds are planted during that meditative experience. Maybe it's one, maybe it's two seeds, but the seeds are planted. And as we get up and go on about our day, along the way, those seeds get watered by whatever somebody might say or wherever we might go or experience. And then they start to become something that maybe start to become an idea
Yeah.
or a notion or knowing. Uh,
Yes.
that's
And then a passion and a conviction and an action, right? It all follows one another. But if you got to get out of your own way and make, pain is very crippling.
and to be able to experience this thing in other people, which we've never done before because we become so self-centered and selfish through addictive behavior. And then once we get out of that, we're able to see these beautiful things in other people, the things that they create, the things that actors and actresses and writers and musicians especially have this wonderful message
Yeah.
that they're putting out. And we start picking that up and gaining
Yeah.
appreciation. This is really good, and I love this. Why didn't
Yeah.
I hear this before? Well,
Mhm.
you heard it, you just didn't listen. You couldn't
Right,
understand.
right, right. That's the point. Um, and I have a motto here, listen, learn, and apply, right? Because it's not just listening for it to brush over your head. What are you learning from it and how can you apply it to your life?
Mhm.
And it might only be one thing, it might be a dozen things, but it's listen, learn, and apply. And it's that first step. The biggest leap you'll take in life is your first step.
Yeah, the beginning of the journey. And all of these life lessons apply in business. They apply over and over and over again. We get better at it each time we run a practice thing. It gets better and it gets better, and so too with our personal lives. And even how I tell people every 10 years there's a metamorphosis takes place as you in your recovery. In 10 years you'll walk differently, you'll talk differently, you'll think differently, you'll probably have a different job. Hopefully you'll have the same wife or husband, and you'll maybe you'll live in a different place. But all these things about every 10 years will change for you,
Yeah,
and they'll be subsequently better and better and better. But lest we think that's all our own doing, better think twice a little bit about that one.
I've just, turned 17. It was a reflection on the past 7 decades, right? And it's like, gosh, 7 decades, when you look at it that way, 7 times 10,
Mhm.
and each decade. And the thing is about the 10 years, when you say to someone 10 years that is in turmoil in the moment, it's too far ahead. When you
Mhm.
talk about in 10 years, you'll look back on this and you'll understand that each step along the way has helped you grow and grow and grow.
Mhm.
And that you'll reflect it at a half a year, you reflect back on a year, you reflect back on 2 years. At
Yep.
10 years, you're going to be going, who is that person? I'm not a resemblance of that person at all anymore.
And then you think back in your first year of sobriety, and I told you that we needed a program here for unlimited expansion because that's what we're doing here. We're
Mm,
selling an unlimited expansion of a spiritual and living program.
hmm
And there is no end to how far we can grow.
No end, no far, and no age limit. Again, that used to be capped at a certain age, you retire out to pasture. No, it's now we keep going and until we exit this body because we've got things to do and there is no age barrier. We might be a bit slower, but we've still got stuff to do. And I think that's
Well,
important, just make sure you
well,
have something to do.
that has been said. Yeah, a little more, a little older, but a little more treacherous too. So there's that.
Yeah, I think we get to a point where we don't put up with BS so much anymore. And
No,
yeah, and it's like roll up our sleeves and get it done, right? And that's the thing to do, is that I think perhaps we need a little bit more of roll up our sleeves and get it done.
yeah.
Um, and stop wallowing in it. For me, psychiatrists, when I used to go to it, it wasn't to do with sobriety, it was to do with something else. Um, I always ended up with them on the couch, not me. And they always wanted to talk about the same old thing. And it's like, no, you're not addressing me. You're addressing my problem, but you're not addressing me or the essence of who I am. And so it always used to end up being reversed. And for me, it's been mostly a journey on my own, but it's that willing. This is why this station is called Self-Discovery Wisdom. It's your discovery of your wisdom that is accessible at any time, but you've got to be willing to do your self-discovery of who
Yeah,
you are.
that's like taking your dog to dog training and they wind up training you
Yeah,
instead.
exactly, exactly, exactly. And so, you never know where that help is going to come from. Just like with your two characters meeting at a church, having that one moment that transformed their lives and went with them through the rest of their lives. We never know where it's going to come from, and it's just be willing to explore. I've got a thing about fear. There's common sense fear. Don't put your hand in the fire. Don't walk in front of a bus. These are common sense fear. Take that with you, it will keep you safe. But instead of fear of the unknown, change it to wonderment of the unknown. What
Hmm.
is there to explore? What is behind this curtain? And take common sense fear with you, but just be open and willing to receive.
Take a risk. Take a risk.
Yeah,
Don't take a crazy risk. Take it.
right.
Make sure your risks are calculated.
Yeah,
Then there's knowledge behind them and there's common sense behind them.
exactly.
But 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 dance. Don't be afraid
Please.
to dance.
Yeah, get up and dance. Who cares if you look goofy? It doesn't matter. You're dancing for you. Get up and dance. Right. That's the whole thing about life, is enjoying life. And then so many people don't know what joy is anymore because everything is being capitalized on, uh, an expenditure on, and like loving, giving, sharing, feeling is free,
Mhm.
right? And nobody needs to put a cap, a dollar mark on that.
So many ways to be drawn different ways now, particularly now. I mean, with media the way it is, um, there used to be like three channels. Now there are
Yeah.
thousands of things
Yes.
to distract and to some very good, some very bad.
Yeah.
And my God, there's thousands and thousands of choices we could make every day, and we have to make the right ones.
Then there's this, the phone, where
Yeah.
everybody's addicted to, and it is an addiction. And everybody is, are like, oh, well, robots are going to come and take over the world. Hello, they already have. They've got you brainwashed, and it's up to you on how you manage that, right? And it's again, back to our own ownership, back to our own responsibility.
Mhm.
We can all jump in the fire, but should we?
Yeah. Well, it's a thing. It's good just to revel in the simple things in life, to have a
Yeah.
conversation with somebody and set that stuff down, have a lunch, and don't pick up the phone or to look at it. Just be with
Yes.
one another. That's so simple,
It's called being present.
Mhm.
And the gift of the now is in the present, right? And when you are present, you actually to live in gratitude because you realize what you do have. And even when you have a bad day, you go, okay, I'm having a bad day. I'm going to love and hug on myself.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful that this isn't my everyday. It's just today.
Well,
So
we
that's,
eventually learn to love ourselves again, isn't that
yeah,
something? Or even just love ourselves because it never was again, because we never did, some of us.
right,
Learn
right.
to learn that is it's amazing.
Yes. Yes, because, we let go of that societal or dictatorial expectation of who we should be and what we should be and how we should be. And we just become the who we really beautifully are.
Mhm.
And then that makes you so much happier because you just don't have to put up with anybody else's expectation anymore. As
Mhm.
Popeye says, I am what I am,
Yeah.
right? So now, where do people get the book, Saving Casey? Where do they get the book? And also your website, love. How do they find you?
The website is the www saving KC, initial K, initial C, the story, savingkcthestory.com.
And
And you can purchase the book there. We're trying to get it up on Audible. We've had a little bit of trouble with that, but it will soon be on Audible.
great.
One can go to Amazon, and having those books released for sale on Amazon as well.
And of course, there's alternative endings, so people can choose which one they want, or maybe get both and see what they agree or not agree on.
The alternative ending is a little bit of mischief there. I didn't have enough. We knew it should have ended a certain way, but I didn't have the courage originally to end it a certain way.
All
So I
right.
went back and did the other ending. So it's like life is complete for me, but judge for yourself.
Give people the choice. And when you make the choice, ask yourself, why did you make that choice?
Mhm.
What is it saying about you? Right? The sad ending, the happy ending. For me, I'm always looking at that happy ending because I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we will change as a human race. I am hopeful that we will step into that higher vibration of love, kindness, consideration, caring, compassion. I'm hopeful that the true essence of who we really are, and I think we've only scratched the surface of our abilities, will come into fruition, but it won't come in the state that we're in right now. The third dimensional hate, loathing, greed, opulence, power. It will not come into that state. You have
Yeah.
to at least be in the fourth dimension of recovery and discovery to step into
Well,
the fifth, sixth, etc.
we're on the precipice of a major transformation and metamorphosis, I think.
Yes,
We
yes,
don't know what that's
yes.
going to look like, but it'll be interesting. I
Well,
think.
in order to have that, there's a wonderful Celtic rune called Haglas, and Haglas is disruption. And
Mhm.
when I ever used to get it, oh, why do I have this? And then I realized, oh no, you want this because it disrupts what's not working for you.
Mhm.
So, what we're seeing right now is so much disruption going on. But out of that disruption, we're hoping that Phoenix will rise from the ashes
Mhm.
and that we will shed light on what we really need to do. But as a human race, we always seem to have to destroy ourselves before we realize what we did was wrong. So let us try and realize what we're doing is wrong and steer the ship in a different direction, please.
Let's do some good stuff. Let's do some right stuff.
It's up to us, isn't it? So
Mhm.
I love the premises of the book, being influenced by, a wonderful singer, the purity of her voice, but the torture of her life, and the journey of coming home from Vietnam and being troubled, and how these two souls met and what it meant. Because ultimately, what we're looking for is that soul that we're going to meet that's going to help pivot us into a new direction, that give us that light and that hope. Because that's that illumination we're looking for that sheds a light on something that we feel we can walk down. So thank you for writing the book, even with both endings. And, if another book comes into mind, go for it. Just let it out. It's meant to be. But keep standing up for your nation, because really so much more needs to be talked about there, and so much more needs to be changed.
Mm.
Um, but unfortunately, with so much change going on around us right now, make sure you're not put on the back burner and that
Yes,
you're at the forefront.
remember that.
hmm and that's, first and foremost, is your people coming together to heal yourselves
Yes.
and to
Mm.
stop that cycle of alcoholism, addiction,
Yep.
to go back to your beautiful soul roots of who you were as a people, and to step back into that, and then you will show the world, the glory of who you are. But it comes down to first heal yourselves. Um,
Yes, it's an important part,
mhm.
best part.
Thank you so much for sharing here today, Buzz.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Sarah. Really appreciate it.
Really appreciate what you're doing here. And remember, Saving Casey, savingcaseythestory.com. And also you'll find it on Amazon as well. These kind of books are here to shift, shed perspectives. I'm very much about book clubs and everybody sharing what they got out of it, as I am on podcast clubs, listening to the same podcast, taking notes, and then sharing what you got out of it, making it a buffet and not just a meat and potatoes. All right, and share and talk. And please, this is what it's all about. Keep the conversation going. So thank you, Buzz. Until next time, folks. Bye for now.
Thank you.
We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tag at the top there, and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration, it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.